Good evening, my friends. Great to be with you on this beautiful evening. And I think it's beautiful because we're all here. Lowell Fillmore, who was the eldest of the three sons of Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, who founded the Unity Movement. He was still employed at Unity Village when I first began working there back in 1975. And he used to say, "We're all here because we're not all there." He had a great sense of humor, and he was a magnificent fellow. Really, I believe hi, Sonia, good evening. I really believe he was sort of the torchbearer of the spiritual dimension of the Unity work. The other sons were also involved in the Unity work for many years, their lives actually. Rickard Fillmore, who was the second son of the Fillmores, he designed, hey, Francesca, good to see you. Nice to have you here. The second son of the Fillmores, he was an architect, and he designed the beautiful grounds and the buildings, the structures at our world headquarters at Unity Village, Missouri. But that was Lowell. He had an interesting sense of humor. We're all here because we're not all there. Anyway, I really appreciate your being here tonight. We're going to take a look at a book that has really touched me for decades at a very profound level. Hi, Veronica. It's touched me at a profound level. And like most things that touch me at a profound level, like when I first get introduced to it, I was talking a little bit about this last week. Conceptually, I don't always get it. And yet, sometimes when I read something or I hear something, I don't necessarily have to understand it intellectually. It speaks to my heart. And even to this day, as many times as I've read the book we're going to look into tonight, I don't always get it, but it always speaks to my heart. And I think in some ways that's because, a lot of the modalities and the conceptual thinking that we walk through life in, we presume to be true. And yet we also know there are other dimensions or ways of seeing things in life that are quite alien, perhaps, seem very different from the conditioned thinking that we're accustomed to. So tonight, hey, Evie, nice to have you here. Nareda, I'm doing great, thank you, and I hope you are too. So are you ready for the great unveiling? Tonight's mystical, profound text is, and that might be coming through backward, but I don't think so, Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching, written by a fellow named Lao-tzu more years ago than any of us could possibly imagine. The particular edition that I'm going to be reading from tonight is translated by a fellow named Stephen Mitchell. Stephen Mitchell is a scholar, and hey, Cindy Binder, yeah, you did figure it out. I'm glad you're here, and you know about this book because we used to study it in Mystical Minds. Tao Te Ching, translated by Stephen Mitchell. Stephen Mitchell is a scholar, a prolific author, and he's also the husband of Byron Katie, who created the work, as it's called, and wrote about it in a book called Love. So these people are a great team, I think, and I've seen them speak together in different settings, and it's wonderful to experience because their understanding of spiritual principle is such that it just exudes from them. Hi, Judy. It just exudes from them. So what I want to do is read a little bit from the foreword of Stephen Mitchell's translation of the Tao Te Ching, because I think it'll give you a little perspective on the excerpts that we're going to look at tonight. Stephen says, Tao Te Ching, pronounced more or less Tao Te Ching, can be translated as the book of eminence of the way, or the book of the way, or the book of the way and how it manifests in the world, or simply the book of the way. About Lao-tzu, which is its author, Relatively little is unknown, and there's practically nothing to be said. And I think this is real interesting as we explore the excerpts from this book tonight, how Lao-tzu is almost invisible as a personality, and yet so very clearly visible as a consciousness. He may have been an older contemporary of Confucius, 551 to 479 BCE, and he may have held the position of archive keeper in one of the petty kingdoms of the time. But all the information that has come down to us is highly suspect. Even the meaning of his name is uncertain. The most likely interpretations, the old master, or more picturesquely, and I love this, the old boy. The longer I'm on this planet, the longer I believe that I'm an old boy. Because I think we're all, even though we age, we still have this quality of childhood about us, though perhaps forgotten. It says of Lao-tzu, he left no traces. All he left to us is this book, the classic manual on the art of living, written in a style of gem-like lucidity, radiant with humor and grace and large-heartedness and deep wisdom. One of the wonders of the world. People usually think of Lao-tzu as a hermit, a dropout from society, dwelling serenely in some mountain hut, unvisited except perhaps by an occasional traveler arriving from the 1960s to ask, what is the meaning of life? But it's clear from his teachings that he deeply cared about society, if society means the welfare of one's fellow human beings. His book is, among other things, a treatise on the art of government, whether of a country or of a child. The misperception may arise from his insistence on wei wu wei, literally doing, not doing, which has been seen as passivity. Nothing could be further from the truth. And then Stephen goes on to talk about how a great athlete can execute perfectly the exact right stroke by exercising no personal will, no conceptual thinking whatsoever. In other words, the doer vanishes into the deed. And you know, when it comes to spirituality, it's like we all work on practicing. And the idea of practicing is to get to the level where we become so proficient at the art of what we're doing that, just as Stephen Mitchell is saying, the deed becomes, or pardon me, the doer becomes lost in the deed. Hi, Christina. I'm glad you're part of this experience tonight. And you'll see this all the way through the philosophy of Tao Te Ching, is that on some level, the objective is to lose our conceptual self. Hi, Angie. It was great to see you yesterday. I can't put it into words. You and Achilles, they were visiting in Miami. I suppose they're still in Miami, but it was wonderful to see their faces and to be able to hug them and welcome them back to Unity on the Bay. Their old stomping grounds. Now I forgot where I was. Let's see. The idea is that as our spiritual awareness increases and our spiritual or unconditioned nature begins to take hold over our lives, we start to lose the intervention, or you could even say the presence of the personality self or the conditioned self. So let's take this. And by the way, this is Shelf Discovery. Tonight's Shelf Discovery is Tao Te Ching, translated by Stephen Mitchell. It's great to be with you. This is an interactive program, so please throw out your questions, share your comments, and we'll all experience this together. So are you ready to have your mind, I don't really want to say bent, but maybe softened through some of the perspectives of the Tao Te Ching? Here we go. Do you have patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself? I remember one of my mentors years ago. She's no longer with us on this plane of expression. Her name was Reverend Dorothy Pearson. And she always used to say, muddy waters, let stand, become clear. muddy waters let stand become clear. What does that mean to you? That's the wisdom of the Tao Te Ching, is that when we, and especially in those moments when we most might want to intercede or interfere with life experiences, and especially when we find ourselves in the midst of emotional triggers, if we can back up, take a breath, and say, I'm going to allow the momentum of life to move me through this experience. And the momentum of life always operates on a level of stillness and of silence. Stillness and silence. Life is always happening in our midst. The issue is that we don't always trust that happening. We believe that it's important for us to get into the picture and exert our personal will to make things happen according to our prescription. And what this passage is saying, I believe, and I'm interested, what do you think it means? Do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Do you have the patience to become still, become quiet, to, as the spiritual teacher Muji says, sort of vacate the content of your mind? Leave it all behind, your thoughts, your feelings, your conceptual nature, and allow the energy, the momentum of life to integrate with you, which of course it's doing all the time, but to allow it consciously and say, I'm willing to let the energy and the momentum of life call the shots here. I'm not going to enter in with my personal prescription of right, wrong, good, and bad. Instead, I'm going to trust that I'm a part of something greater and grander than anything I've ever imagined before. And I'm going to begin to allow that to orchestrate the activities of my life. The reality is, I believe, my friends, and you're certainly free to your own perspective on this, that's what's happening anyway. The idea that I, Chris Jackson, am living my life, I'm executing all my steps. When I look back over my life, yeah, I've made some decisions, good ones, bad ones maybe. But at the end of the day, this life has been living me. And the longer I'm on the planet, the more I think that it's presumptuous of me to try to direct the course of life, of affairs, including my own, but rather to pull back, to find that place of silence and stillness and open myself to allow life to live me. What do you think about that? It's a big one, because we feel like we are personally responsible. I remember this quotation that I loved from Buckminster Fuller. He said, the human species is the only species ever to occupy planet Earth that was presumptuous enough to think it was in charge. So just contemplate that our lives perhaps are being lived. Now, in addition to being, as Stephen Mitchell mentioned in the foreword, to being a great personal manual for living one's own life, the principles of the Tao Te Ching are also completely applicable to government and to organizational life. There's even a great book, it's a little difficult to get a hold of because I think it went out of print, by John Hyder. He was a resident actually of Coconut Grove. It's called The Tao of Leadership. And one of these Monday evenings when we're exploring some of the pages of books on my shelf behind me, we'll touch into that. Let's see, Noel. Hi, Noel. I'm glad you're here. The natural state of the water is still and clear. The bottom may be muddy and can get stirred up from time to time. Hallelujah. It does settle unless we keep stirring it, unless we keep bringing. Thank you, Noel. That's beautiful and it's profound. Hi, Armando. Glad you're here tonight. As long as we keep through our I'm going to say lack of faith and trust, and our belief that we have to personally intervene in situations and circumstances in life on an ongoing basis. Lao-tzu goes on in here to say, yeah, there are times when you may believe and you may have to act out of personal will and exert yourself into a situation, interfere as he calls it. But these are few and far between, and always there will be consequences of one kind or another. So back to the idea of using the principles of Tao Te Ching in government or in organizational life, as well as in personal life. Tao Te Ching says, When the master governs, the people are hardly aware that he exists. Next best is a leader who is loved. Next, one who is feared. The worst is one who is despised. I'm going to read that first line again. When the master governs, the people are hardly aware that he exists or she exists. This is what I have come to call invisible leadership. It's not the most popular form of leadership because people expect leaders to be outspoken and to issue edicts and direction and to lead the pack, as opposed to allowing the process. Every organization has an internal process. I learned this way back in my years of Silent Unity when I marched into the halls of Silent Unity as the second floor director of correspondence services, thinking I was here to save the world. Because I was young, I was ambitious, and I thought, I can make this better. I can improve this. I have ideas. My ideas are, in all humility, better than most other people's ideas. And I walked in with that attitude. And I'll never forget, I'm going to use her name because she was the supervisor of the mail opening department at Silent Unity. Now most of the mail comes in by email, but back then it was all U.S. postal system. And I was trying to tell her how to do her job. And I was like, 29 years old or something, 25 years old, walking in to tell her what to do. And she'd been doing her work for decades, and she was very integrated into the fiber of Silent Unity. And I said, Ruth, I think you should do this, and I think you should do that. And Ruth says, just looks me in the eye and says, now look here, you young whippersnapper. So she never took any of that. She really did know, as did many, and I pray still today, many people within the Silent Unity organization understood that the organization had a life of its own, an energy of its own that could be counted on, a consciousness of its own, and that the wise leader never intrudes into the collective consciousness of any organization or group of individuals, but rather they realize their role is to facilitate the collective consciousness, the collective process and evolution of any organization. If you don't trust the people, Tao Te Ching says, you make them untrustworthy. Should we trust people? Now, I'm going to take this, and I welcome your comments, anybody that wants to share on this, or if you have any questions, because these are, I realize, out-of-the-box ideas that really do not mesh with the Western mindset all that well. In fact, I think one of the reasons that I resonate so much with Stephen Mitchell's translation of the Tao Te Ching is because he's done a really good job. He's a master of the English language. So he's been able to take these really deep, profound principles and put them into a language that for my Western mindset works really well. He says, if you don't trust the people, you make them untrustworthy. From a spiritual perspective, from my spiritual perspective, I'll say that everyone that's in our world, we've talked about this, I think, at least off and on for the last 2 weeks, everyone that is a part of our world is, in a sense, a reflection of ourselves. And when we don't trust other people, it's a real sign for us to look at how we may not be trusting ourselves, at least not completely. And that when we trust ourselves, we find it easier to trust other people, realizing that other people are always a reflection of the relationship that we have with ourselves. Then he goes on to say, this is my favorite, years of leading organizations that I've had in my life. This one speaks to me so directly. I don't think I practice it all the time, but here you go. The master doesn't talk. He acts. When his work is done, the people say, amazing. We did it all by ourselves. Hi, Pam. Good to see you. So nice to see me. I mean you. Ha ha ha. Yeah, I get it, Pam. So nice to see ourselves in each other. So when the master doesn't talk, he acts. When his work is done, the people say, amazing, we did it all by ourselves. Again, this is what I would call invisible leadership. That is, being the presence that accommodates the process without our allowing our personal self, our personality, our constructs, our conceptual thinking to guide the way. So Cindy always asks me good questions. Thanks, Cindy. How do we affect change? Before I answer that, let me go to another piece of this book, and I'll come back to that in just a second. This is verse 29, because I think it's relevant, Cindy, to the question that you're asking. Do you want to improve the world? I don't think it can be done. The world is sacred. It can't be improved. If you tamper with it, you ruin it. If you treat it like an object, you'll lose it. The master sees things as they are without trying to control them. She lets them go her own way and resides in the center of the circle. So in answer to your question, Cindy, and this is one of the perplexing and I think often misunderstood ideas in the Tao Te Ching, is that wisdom for me comes from recognizing the source of all things. The source of all things being, as we call it in unity, the presence of God. Others call it source. Others call it divine essence, whatever title you choose for that infinite intelligence and creativity that has designed everything that's a part of life experience. That energy, the recognition of its ultimate reality, has to take us to a place of believing that things are as they are for a reason and for a purpose. And the way, thanks Angie, divine flow, and the way that we support or encourage or in our own personal lives allow that infinite creativity and intelligence to express is by being willing to acknowledge it, to focus our attention on it, and to look for it everywhere all the time. So the way that we affect change is by not exercising personal will or bringing our personality or conceptual self into the mix, but rather by recognizing this infinite creativity and intelligence at work, trusting our intuition and our discernment to be able to identify it when we see it, and then standing with it in support of it. There's a concept that says this world is broken and needs to be repaired. That's a mental construct. And when we operate out of that, we turn ourselves into 24/7 repair men or repair women, trying to go out and affect change by exercising our own ideas of what's right or wrong or good or bad. This is my personal belief anyway, as opposed to realizing everything is as it must be. And another excerpt from this book, Lao-tzu says, there is a time for being ahead. There's a time for being behind. This will remind you of a favorite scripture. A time for being behind, a time for being in motion, a time for being at rest, a time for being vigorous, a time for being exhausted, a time for being safe, a time for being in danger. All of this, I believe, is by divine orchestration. And the best way we can affect change in our personal lives and in the world is to seek to recognize and cooperate with that divine momentum. Wei Wu Wei. Absolutely. Thank you, Aaron. Doing, not doing. Wei Wu Wei. Wei Wu Wei. Cindy says, who are we to think? Oh, pardon me. That's Angie. Cindy. Aren't there some things that call us to action? Fairness is a basic tenet. Shouldn't we try to help others? Well, yes, I think we should. And there are many things that are calling us to action. I believe, the issue, and Wei Wu Wei is not about not taking action. It's about taking action that is coming from the space of our natural being, that knows how to move and flow and gracefully twist through life experiences, winding our way down the road. So it's not saying that we don't take action. It's saying that we don't take action based on our personal ideas about the way things need to be. We take action based on aligning ourselves with this natural momentum of the infinite, invisible creativity and substance of the universe, and allowing it to take action through us. And action that comes through us from this infinite creativity and intelligence is the most powerful and effective action that we can take. So Wei Wu Wei doesn't mean that you're not doing anything. It means that the actions that you're taking you're doing is being done. It's the complete allowance of, or the willingness to allow yourself to be used as a vessel and a vehicle and a point of action for the infinite intelligence and creativity of the universe, as opposed to bringing our personal ideas about how things need to be done. And Cindy, I know that you know all of that. I appreciate the question because you make me think. You always make me think. And sometimes you make me not think. And they're both really good alternatives. Angie says, who are we to think we have the answer of what's needed to fix this world? You know, right now we have a lot of different people, a lot of different perspectives that are saying that they think they know what's needed to fix the world, to make the world a better place. And even those that are diametrically opposed to our idea of what will make the world a better place, they're rock solid in their faith and confidence. So that's what happens, is you end up with personalities, individuals coming together in conflictual states, as opposed to everyone opening and allowing this free flow of the universe to move and act through them. Angie, perhaps our action should be egoless. I think that's what this book is all about. And believe me, we just scratched the surface. Egoless, meaning everything that we've been talking about, that we are not required or requested to make demands of ourselves, other people in the world, based on our own ideas of what ought to be, what should be. My mother, I can hear her saying right now, stop shoulding on yourself. It's really about opening ourselves up, which is truly the key to, I think, all spiritual growth, is that willingness to recognize, that we're a part of something so amazing and so beautiful that we would never think to criticize it. We would never think to believe that it needed to be improved. The real world, our natural world, our true home is exquisite. It has been, if anything, the egoic and the personal will at work that has sought to disturb that momentum and that progress and that process. It's impossible to do that. You know, we can run around all of our lives trying to make everything better for ourselves and for other people, according to our own prescription, what we think needs to be done. But I'll tell you, every time I have even the slightest inclination to move into this state of willingness, of letting go, of trusting, the benefits that come to me are far greater, far more effective than anything I could have plotted or planned on my own. Hi, Kevin. Ichimararo. Bingo. Very true. You know, I could just spend all evening here with you together, and I so appreciate the time and your presence here. This is really personally rewarding for me because, you know, I have a lot of these wonderful books that have touched my life, but I don't often go back and rewind through the pages to realize what real gifts they are. So again, tonight we've been on Tao Te Ching, the English translation by Stephen Mitchell. You can pick this up on Amazon. It's a book that will make you scratch your head like most great spiritual works do, but the potential for just being open to its messages is life-changing. Have a wonderful evening. I'll be back next Monday night at 6 o'clock. And just know how much I appreciate you and appreciate what you bring to the spiritual community of Unity on the Bay. We are all reflections of each other. And what I see in all of you every time I have the opportunity to say hello is another individual that reflects my own desire, and I believe the desire of so many, to liberate ourselves. You want change? Open yourself up to the spiritual reality of who you are and what this world is really all about. Love you. And thank you, Veronica. Thank you, Cindy. I love you too. Everybody have a great night. We'll see you next week, okay? God bless. And God is blessing you right now.